Had to not laugh out loud when I overheard a GameStop employee explain to a mother about Saints Row 3 and the dildo sword. What are some of the funniest situations you have had to watch an employee handle? Woman called up the vet I worked for, concerned about her bird who had been acting odd. I had to explain to her that her bird was masturbating with its fuzzy toy. So awkward. I was standing in line at GameStop once. This youngish teenage boy was at the counter with his dad. The dad demanded to know which GTA game was the one where you could beat up the H. Not sure if he wanted a specific one for his son or not. The employee seemed very unsure and just handed a game to the pair and gave the speech about it being rated M. I saw the head lifeguard at a city pool have to explain to a patron who spoke absolutely no English that thongs were not permitted. Apparently there were no female guards on duty at the time. I don't think I've ever seen a face turn so red. I saw a morbidly obese guy get stuck in a booth at a Joe's Crab Shack. It was in the bar area. His wife was trying to get him free and called for help from their waiter. The waiter was a small girl, probably 5 feet 2 inches 110 pounds tops. The girl is pushing this guy's stomach and while the sew is yanking a dude's arm. They had to call a manager to unscrew the table from the floor. Apparently it's a pain in the butt due to a non-standard screwdriver. Pull out the table, and then the guy could stand up. Thing is, the fat guy was so out of breath he couldn't even walk. This ordeal lasted a good 45 minutes. I had to explain to a lady I wasn't Arab or didn't speak Arabic after she asked me something in Arabic, and then asked me if I was sure I wasn't Arab. Sigh. When I was little I went to Kmart to buy some Pokemon cards. I went through the decks, found one I liked, then went up to the register with the money my parents gave me. As it turned out, they had given me half of a $10 bill to help pay for the cards, with the logic that half of a 10 must equal $5. Walked up to the register, it comes time to pay, and I handed the cashier the half of a 10 as payment. She looked first at me like are you serious, then looked around for a manager to help us out, and then just said, "Oh, what the heck, that makes sense." Gave me my bag and said have a nice day, greatest cashier I've experienced yet. It may be different wherever you are, but here in Australia, half a $10 note is worth $5 and is usable as legal tender. It's valued based on how much of the note is left, and must be at least 20% of the full size. If less than 20% is missing, it's valued at the full value. I once encountered a couple making out in a hot tub. There was some hand-on genital action going on, which was pretty obvious. I asked if they could please knock it off, as I was babysitting my brother and younger cousins, who were 7-10 years of age, and it was just awkward all around. The guy gave me the finger, told me to frick off, and thrust his hand deeper downward. I went to the front desk. The front desk guy had no idea what to do. He ended up calling down a manager, who tried to explain to them that no, just because they were paying for a room, they could not get handsy in the hot tub. They ignored him and continued to make out. Everyone was watching this guy try to get the attention of these people, and finally he had to call security. He kept tapping their heads. They'd swat his hand away, or he'd try to push their heads away from each other, and they'd move away. He kept yelling. They just continued on. I saw a kid at the mess stop that wanted to buy one of those cards where you can download the games and don't have to pay them. That's what he told to the employee. She had to explain him how this was illegal etc while I had to stop myself from laughing out loud. The kid had no idea. One of our customers was a female bodybuilder with a surprisingly great sense of humor. Co-worker called Balls. She accepted an arm wrestling challenge from one of my co-workers and kicked his butt. Not necessarily an employee, but I had to get an ultrasound a while ago on my kidneys, hereditary thing, and I noticed a familiar looking case on the one counter in the room, being the band geek I am, and I asked the nurse, "Is that a flute case?" She gives me an awkward look, chuckles, and says UHH. "That's the case for our intravaginal ultrasound scanner." I just looked away, said "Oh," and we both burst out laughing. TLDR. Saw what I thought was a flute case, turned out to be for vagina scanning. This one time, at ultrasound camp. Took my cat to the vet yesterday to have her kidneys checked up on. There was this vet and a dude sitting the bench next to me with his aggressive gigantic orange cat. Let's take our cats out of their cages and have a kitty play date. My cat Poopsie is really nice, the man said to the vet. He then let Poopsie out of his cage, and the cat promptly defecated on the vet. Accurate name. I had to explain to my boss, who is about 50 years old, that a booty call is not the same as a pocket dial. What was more awkward is that apparently everyone else had heard her say she was booty calling whoever several times but never corrected her, making me look like the ultimate jerk for pointing it out. Whatever. This is adorable and sexy. I once had to explain to someone in the deli where I work that head cheese was not actually cheese, but a kind of sausage consisting of diced meat from a pig's head in a gelatin base. Her face instantly went from cheerfulness to disgust. Head cheese is also slang for accumulated cruft under an uncircumcised foreskin. One year for Christmas, my grandmother got the parents in the family a bottle of wine along with a few other things. The maker of the wine is Menage a Trois. So after reading the label, my grandmother went to a store clerk and asked what it meant. This employee naturally told her that the guy behind the counter would know, but for some reason it escaped him. So here we are having Christmas brunch and my grandmother is tell us this story and I can no longer hold the laughter. Turns out the employees at the store found the name of the wine funny as well, and now she really wanted to be on the inside of the joke. So everyone gives each other the I'm not telling her look when my mom finally says, "Mom, it means 3 people having sex with each other." My grandmother then gives us a shocked look and turned around to go into the kitchen. I really miss that woman. When dealing with wine, Menage a Trois actually refers to 3 different kind of grapes that they used to make it. I asked my French teacher about it when I saw it on a wine bottle too. The more you know. I tell this to customers too. It's our job to try persuade parents from buying their kids games that are above their age rating, using either dildo sword or giant 7 feet purple dildo. You beat a guy to death with our effective methods. Waiting in line for Dark Knight Rises, an usher at the cinema kept chatting to myself and a friend about being a huge Christian Bale fan. We kept repeating back to him, Christian Bale, and he would take that as a cue to continue saying things like, "The guys played Bruce Wayne and John Connor." Needless to say, he was pretty embarrassed when we said, "Oh, you mean Christian Bale?" It wasn't a big deal at all, but the guy suddenly became really awkward when we corrected the mistake and started mumbling things at the ground. Then he just became sort of flushed and stumbled off embarrassed, without really giving a response. Odd guy. Not an employee, but I had to explain to a gentleman why his under 10 children should not watch The Watchmen. I explained the blow penis, rape scene, and incredible violence. If you watched The Daily Show last night, Orville Redenbacher talking about butt chugging and all the guys behind him keeping a straight face. Story circa 2001. I was working for a competitive local exchange carrier. I was taking provisioning phone calls in ultra new network operations center. We had new phones, new chairs, and new responsibilities. For the most part we catered to professionals. 9 to 5 operations that varied from day traders to printing houses. Any business around that needed phone or internet access. We had one customer of, how should I say, questionable professionalism. He maintained a dirty website, and we were required, as employees, to help him when he had questions. I didn't like him. One day Cole calls in and complains about something not working. I put him on hold. Pervert King Cole on the line, I shouted. It had become a pet name for a client who was not only quite disliked among the other employees but also technically clueless to boot. Nothing like being foul and stupid, with your only redeeming quality that you paid your bill on time. I start going off about how dumb he was, how I hated it when he called, and how it always turns out to be his problem. I'm unable to see a problem, so I bring in some help from our resident Unix admin. Once Paul arrives, I restart my "Carl's so stupid" rant. After we all decide we don't have a clue what he's done to mess things up, I pick up the phone. "Hello," I sweetly say. "Carl, you know," he begins. I wasn't on hold. What? I started to shake slightly. I was on speakerphone. He says, "I heard everything you said." "Oh, that. I knew that." I lied. "That's just shop talk, Carl." Click. As soon as I saw the put on hold part, I knew exactly where this was going. Oh man, that would suck. One time, My family and I were eating at a restaurant outside, and there was this morbidly obese woman to come and sit down on the plastic lawn chairs that they had for the outside diner area. So, she sits down and is talking with her friends, and my family and I are chatting as well. However, all of a sudden there is a loud crack and we look over, and we see her lying on the ground trying to get up. She looked like a bug when you put it on its back. It was hilarious, and the whole restaurant was trying to stifle their laughter. But what made it even more funny was the fact that while she was attempting to get up, she is screaming, "Go ahead and laugh. Go ahead and laugh at the lady who broke her chair." I still, to this day, laugh about it, and I'm laughing about it as I am writing this. It wasn't funny until I read the quote, and then I couldn't help myself. Something that I have had to handle. I work in clothing retail, and at my store we had dress shirts that come in 3 different fits. A modern fit, lots of extra side room, fitted, more tapered at the side, and an extra slim, very form-fitting. So this Eastern European guy comes in. He's kind of middle-aged, big gut, about an XL everywhere else, needs a shirt for a wedding on that day. I explain the shirt fits to him and he insists on trying the extra slim fit in a large. I kindly suggest that we start with a modern fit in an extra large. He says he doesn't like how they get baggy. There's no convincing him. So I pick out some colors in large extra slim, take a shirt apart, they're packaged and pinned on cardboard, and let him try them on. He comes out. Oh god, I'm laughing just typing this. He comes out with the shirt stretched over his voluptuous curves, constricted neck, buttons tugging on each other, saying, "HAA, I look good." I explain that we have some better options in the store, and that if the neck is too tight, then that automatically trumps everything. What I wanted to say was that he is simply too big for that shirt. His love handles. God almighty, those love handles. I used the neck excuse to move him up to an extra large. Even he knew that neck fat drooping over the collar was a bad sign, but he still refused to go to the modern fit. That was about all I could do for him. TLDR. Large man comes into the clothing store I work at, wanted a slim fitting shirt, couldn't bear to tell him that his gut was eclipsing his moves. At a Japanese restaurant, in America especially known for sushi, and a guy with what must be either a classy new girlfriend or a first date walk-in. Either way, this sophisticated broad clearly doesn't understand the unique differences of Asian. She tries to order a beef bowl only to be told they serve nothing like that there. Definitely not a Judon place, and yet she persists and keeps trying. To try to placate her and to help her enjoy their day, the guy decides to order some rice and then some sort of meat fusion food. It was some type of expensive roll sushi, which he separates the meat to make her beef bowl. This hurt to read. Explaining to parents is one of the best things about working at a game store. Oh, your 7-year-old wants Grand Theft Auto. Your guess what that's about? The looks on their faces make my day. You sick, glorious frick. My dad had to do this. It was so freaking funny. He said, "Are you sure you want to buy this game for your son? You can be a fully naked person running around in strip clubs beating people to death with a giant rubber penis. He owns a game store." Try the same conversation with your mother after she bought the game for your 10-year-old brother. That was awkward. In like 2002, my mom asked some kid working at Tower Records if Bloodhound Gang had anything recent out. All they had was hooray for boobies. He was having a hard time looking her in the eye and saying it. I was at GameStop listening to 2 employees fight about whether Batman or Ezio was the better protagonist in a game. As I approached them, the female employee says to the other employee, "I'm gonna kick you in the entire penis after this customer leaves." My co-workers love to tell the story of the day I had to explain to a lady why her guest client could not have the same breakfast as the rest of the group. She felt we were being unaccommodating and it was going to reflect poorly on her. 20 minutes later she still didn't understand why a hotel would not have kosher sausage or bacon. When I worked in a movie rental store, I tried to explain a customer on how to remove the restriction from certain Warner Brothers movies on his PS2. I would have given him a new movie if it wasn't for my boss having yelled at me for being too nice to the customers only a few moments earlier. So midway in explaining and literally drawing instructions for the stupid workaround that Sony installed on their console, the customer interrupts me with a sudden rage outburst. slamming the DVD cover on the counter and yelling to me, "You can stick this DVD up your ass," before storming out. After he slammed the door, me and the queue he had made just stared blankly at each other before bursting out in laughter. I really don't know how we could have reacted any other way. I didn't overhear it, but was actually involved in the discussion as a customer. This happened back in 2004. After work tonight, I went to one of the local stores to get the Grand Theft Auto double pack for the PS2. GTA 3 and GTA VC bundled together for the low price of $24.88. You can't beat that. A mother and her son were waiting behind me to get their game, and their choice was the newest addition to the Grand Theft Auto series, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. I was a little shocked at this because the son was probably about 7 or 8 years old. Apparently the store employee was a little concerned too and started talking to me about the game and some aspects of it while glancing at the mother, hoping that she overheard and realized that the game probably wasn't appropriate for her son. We thought our hopes were answered when she turned to me and asked if the game was appropriate for children. "Well, miss, it is rated M for mature. Those games usually are not geared for anyone under 17. The salesperson backed me on this, but we didn't think the woman believed us. She started looking at the back of the game to see some of the descriptions, possibly to find something to prove us wrong and that are innocent. Darling, little son would never ask for a game along those lines. I glanced at the salesperson, then looked back at the mother. I then started to explain in some detail about what you could do in the game, about how you participate in drive-bys, deal with gangs and drug runners, can beat someone to death with a baseball bat, among other things. I mentioned the strong language and how it would be something that sailors would relate to. I also discreetly mentioned how you can also do the deed with prostitutes, and we think that realization may have set in. She looks at her son and says, "I don't know if I should let you get this," but she held onto it anyway. The salesperson and I looked at each other and just shrugged. We did what we could to forewarn her, and anything more was her own damned fault now. The mother and her son had started walking towards the front of the store in order to pay for the game, and what I heard next nearly made me pee myself from lodging so hard, only because it was so surreal and totally unexpected. Obviously the son had overheard some of the conversation, and knew more than his mother thought he did. As they were walking up to the registers, he looked at his mother and said in a voice that seemed rather innocent, "But I won't frick any H, Mom. Promise. If that kid is any evidence of what the next generation is going to be like, we're either going to have a bunch of kids that have some great comic timing, or we're all screwed." I'm a lifeguard, and one day on the children's playset there was a small child running around with a bikini bottom but no top. If the child was a girl, she'd have to put a top on, but if it was a boy he could continue on as he pleased. The problem was that we couldn't tell if it was male or female. I called some break guards over and we tried to tell what the child's gender was, but to no avail. That was the only situation I've even been able to say the words "I keep staring at its crotch, and sometimes I think I see a little penis" without sounding like a total perv. After a while, we whistled for our supervisor. He couldn't tell either, so he had to go over to the mom and ask if her child was a guy or a girl. The mom said that it was a girl and that she was sorry, but I'll never forget the look on her face. TLDR. Kid is topless at the pool. Lifeguards can't tell if the kid's a guy or girl. Head guard has to ask parents. This seems like a ridiculous rule if the kid is so young you can't even tell. I work at a late night bar. Our security staff deals with the most absurd situations you could never imagine. One particular night, a came in and got so drunk he crapped his pants and had to be escorted out. He couldn't understand why crapping his pants was grounds to be sent home. It was bad. This happened to me when I went to get Saints Row 3. My immigrant mom then asks what a dildo is. So not only did he have to explain the dildo sword, he explained what a dildo is. Still got the game, though. When I was playing SR3, even though I was home alone, I would constantly look behind me to make sure nobody was watching me play the parts involving dildos. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.